Okay, so you just got your testing kit and you got this stone in here. It just came from the factory. A must do is you have to take some 400 grit sandpaper right here. You have to tear this off, little piece. You take the piece of stone and you sand it. We'll call it sand it vigorously. And you don't have to go crazy. Just this is about all you're going to need. Just exactly what I'm doing right here. All right. Once you sand it, you'll feel it's definitely smoother. But what we need to do after that is, I'm not going to do it here because it's going to have chemicals and we got some camera equipment here. You would take the 14 karat acid and you put a little dab on here, and you would take a tissue, a lightly tissue, and dab that dab on there so that it's evenly on the stone, and it will turn the stone a little dark. You let it sit here for probably about 30 seconds to a minute. And then once it's been on there for 30 seconds to a minute, you take a big tissue, a big ball of it, because you remember the acid can drip down the sides of the stone. And what happens? You're going to get acid on your fingers. You're going to get acid everywhere. You don't want to do that. So typically what I do is I leave the stone on a surface, put the seasoning on there, and then I take a tissue and I wipe it off without touching it with my other hand because the acid will be going everywhere. And then you take the tissue and put it in a separate bag so it doesn't get thrown in the trash. And you basically get some more tissue till it's perfectly dry. You pick it up, you wipe it off, make sure there's no acid anywhere because you don't want it on your hands and fingers. But once you season the stone, you'll get the correct readings. And we'll talk more about the readings later. But this is an important step because if you don't season your stone like this, you will not get the correct readings. And then we'll go right into the same topic. How do I clean my stone? Well, what I just did is basically cleaning your stone for the first time. So say you have this stone for 6 months and all these little gold scratches are everywhere. You take the sandpaper again, you sand it all off of here, just like I'm doing now, and you season the stone again. So it's almost like rinse, repeat, do it again. And this will keep your stone giving the correct readings, and will also make it so that you don't have a bunch of little gold streaks everywhere and you get confused as to what was the mark I put on there, what's going on. So the last thing I need to touch on right now is we talked about acid going everywhere on your clothes, everywhere. When I was a youngster and I was 12 years old, I was sitting at the counter and bam, the acid bottle fell on my jeans. I didn't tell anybody. I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And I was too embarrassed at the time. I was 12 years old. The last thing you want to do is take off your pants in front of everybody. So I nonchalantly walked over to the bathroom. And then by the time I got there, by the time I had, taken my pants down, and there was just a little spot on my leg right there. But what it is it slowly seeps in, and it can cause third-degree burns. So if you do buy an acid testing kit, make sure you read all the regulations, read all the warnings. You have to keep this stuff very safe. Again, we don't sell it. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying if you're going to be using an acid test kit, you need to understand all the things that could go wrong with it. I have a scar on my leg to this day from that. And it took about 6 months for that wound to heal because it's a burn wound. The only reason I'm going into this detail is you have to understand how dangerous this can be. You do not want this laying around so the grandkids can get it or so your daughter can get it. You don't want it in your car where it can get overheated and explode. Again, all of these things are on the warning labels if you buy an acid test kit from someone. But again, read those warnings and heed them. This test kit had been sitting around a while. I don't know if our cameraman can get this. But this here is what happened to a magnet that was left in there. It's green, it's corroded, it's nasty, and these bottles are still sealed. So what I'm trying to say, please remember this is a dangerous test kit if not handled properly. I have the proof of it. So what happens if you do spill acid somewhere? Listen, they sell solutions. If you're going to buy the test kit, buy the solution. It's an agent where you basically, if you spill acid anywhere, you drop the solution on it, it nullifies it. It basically counteracts it, and it's a base, and it neutralizes the acid, including your leg. Had I had that base back in the old days, I would have just sprayed it all on my skin, wiped it off, and nothing would have happened. But what happened is I didn't. All I had was baking soda, which is the next best thing. So if you're going to have an acid test kit, you have to have that solution. If for some reason you don't have the solution and something happens, baking soda will work as well. Baking soda will neutralize the acid. So what you do, spill acid somewhere, pour large amounts of baking soda, let it neutralize it, and then after some time period, clean it up, and you should be good to go. So that explains how to season your stone, clean your stone, how to be very careful, read the instructions that you get from your warnings, and also how to protect yourself if acid does get somewhere. Again, we're going to go on now to testing metals and precious metals. So how do we use this test kit? Well, basically, again, we're going to concentrate on the 3 acids. We're going to concentrate on the 14, 18, and 22. We're going to talk about the file, the magnet, the stone, and basically a loop. Again, let me say the first things that we need to talk about as far as doing precious metals is you have to take a look at the piece as a whole and take a look at it. The first test that people generally use for precious metals, we'll call this the first test, the magnet test. So again, we'll call this the first test, the magnet test. The magnet test is a very simple pre-screening test. If you have items that you think may or may not be precious metals, you take your magnet, and we don't suggest using a refrigerator magnet or some kind of weak magnet. We suggest the rare earth magnet. This rare earth magnet has 55 pounds of pull. Watch what it can do to this file. Picks it up, no problem. Matter of fact, you have to pull it off of there. You don't want some weak magnet that's not going to give you a correct test. So just like picked up the file, this magnet will pick up base metal. So if you run the magnet over your gold or silver item that you think may or may not be gold or silver, if it is attracted to the magnet, it is not precious metals. So that's what we call the first test. It's a pre-screen, but if your item attracts to the magnet, it's not gold, silver, or platinum, or any precious metal. But again, remember, just because it doesn't stick to the magnet doesn't mean it is a precious metals.